this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
This is the biggest night in podcasting.
The countdown is on to our 2026 iHeart Podcast Awards. Live from South by Southwest, March 16th, we'll honor the very best in podcasting from the past year and celebrate the most innovative talent and creators in the industry.
It's truly a who's who of the podcasting world.
Creativity, knowledge, and passion will all be on full display.
And the winner of the iHeart Podcast Award is...
See all the nominees now at iHeart.com/podcast awards.
Audible is a proud sponsor of the Audible Audio Pioneer Award. Explore the best selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and originals all in one easy app. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. See Kane Brown, Parker McCullum, Riley Green, Shabuzi, Dylan Scott, Russell Dickerson, Gretchen Wilson, Chase Matthew, Lauren Elena. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping in another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey Wisecrack, it's your host and producer, Jodi. What you're about to hear is a conversation between myself and the godfather of true crime pods, Payne Lindsey. Payne has been a big champion of Wisecrack from the jump, so we're discussing behind the scenes of the investigation, creator-producer questions, and how Ed and I recently took his show on the road and performed at CrimeCon in Denver. As always, thank you for listening and enjoy this bonus episode.
Jodi, it's good to see you again. We had a blast in CrimeCon, and seeing the live show again, Ed's stand-up is always, every time I feel like it's funnier and more intense. And also congratulations on becoming our first Tenderfoot #1 comedy podcast, which is wild to say because we're all true crime, but this is a story that falls in multiple different genres, and I love it for that. But yeah, thanks for letting me be here to talk to you about the show.
No, thank you. I know I just saw you in Denver and I'm only partially recovered. I don't know about you, but it was really exhilarating. You know, it was a crime conference and people came to laugh, and I think they did. And they also got immersed in the story. So I think it was a pretty great show. And I do think that you are more engaged and nervous than either Ed or I. I saw you pacing backstage and listening. You're so dialed in.
It's funny because I get like excited where I'm like, it's like the little kid inside me is like, I picture myself on stage or something, and I'm sort of, living vicariously in the moment through Ed in like a weird excitement. But it's fun. He's such a pro. I aspire to do a stand-up set because that's so incredibly difficult. Like, I can't even imagine. But funny you picked up on that.
I think I could tell you that I can tell you're a comedy fan as well, because you were like with the timing as much. I know I'm supposed to answer some questions for you, but what was your reaction the first time that you heard the set? Because you heard it, I guess, probably 4 years ago for the first time, or 5?
I mean, it's one of those things where obviously I didn't know what to expect. He opens it up very just kind of nonchalant, and you're like, who is this guy? And he kind of already has this sort of disarming, funny demeanor, which I really enjoyed, and kind of makes you sit back and feel comfortable laughing. I just remember the way that he would pivot from just this off the wall, hilarious sort of joke into the sort of serious elements of the story, and how smooth that was, and how it wasn't necessarily jarring. It was kind of like all of the comedy part of his set and his character sort of prepared you for the depth of what was to come. And to me, it sort of made it a better human story. And I really just was drawn to that part of it. And from that moment forward in the set, I was glued into the storytelling. And every time it got funny, I was like, oh, thank God, I can breathe, a little comic relief, right? We could all use that with dark content. But I want to ask you a question, actually, because people who haven't listened to this yet, which if you know me and you haven't listened to it, I'm mad at you. But when I was trying to describe this show to people, I'm like, how do I do this? You know, like, what do you say this is? And so I want to ask you what you're saying it is, just to the person who has no clue what you're talking about.
It's so tough. I've been on this beat for almost 9 years now, and I still struggle with the log line, right?
Right.
I guess for people who are interested in true crime, it's to me, a near-death experience that is an eyewitness account of a double homicide wrapped in a 60-minute stand-up set, and the investigation subsequent to hearing that set.
Yeah.
I guess that's like, just very 10,000-foot view of what it is. I do think it's so much more, but that's how I pitch it. And then I think for people who are comedy fans who are not necessarily in the crime genre, I just think it's a wild ride. It's very storytelling heavy. Kind of reminds me of like Tig Notaro, Mike Birbiglia, Hannah Gadsby, where they take, really deep things and still make them funny. And those two feelings of laughing and tragedy are very close to each other, going up and going down.
I mean, my good friend Mike, who's a producer here at Tenderfoot, he's been with me for years, and we've investigated cold cases, and a lot of times you just get deep into the trenches of like a tragedy, for a lack of a better word, and it can be really heavy. But we sort of have developed over the years, just internally, our own sort of gallows humor with things, just like to ourselves about our own sort of experiences, and it's almost like a way of processing and managing something really heavy. And I feel like Wisecrack embodies that. I think it's cathartic to see Ed sort of live out loud the experience and like is able to reflect on a stage from a point of view that is kind of poking fun at himself and making light of a situation for the idea of how impactful and traumatic it actually was. And I think that's powerful, because I think we all do that to a degree, and it's a good thing to do if you do it right,
I think you nailed it. I kind of wonder if cops, detectives, criminal litigators talk and have that gallows humor as well privately.
Right.
Because it's just depressing to deal with every day. And I don't know about you, but what I found, at least like speaking to some of the official people on the case, particularly those who were in Brett's trial, they were very funny. I think that's how everybody copes, right? And I think the other side of the coin is like, you don't want to, I think when you try to talk about this story, you don't want to, two people were gruesomely murdered, and then a third. It's really sad. It's upsetting. And, having those two feelings of laughing and horror to some degree, it can be offensive. So I think like Ed does, bravo to Ed. I think he does a great job interweaving those feelings. But I kind of feel like, we all have that secret vocabulary who work in some of the dark arts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tell me about the first time you ever stumbled upon this set in the UK. I mean, there was a time when I was first played this and I first saw it from Ed, but by then this was a conceptualized thing, right? So tell me the first time you stumbled upon this and you're like, what is this? I want to know more. Like, tell me about your experience with that.
I had just quit my job. And
that's always a good start, That's a good start
exactly.
to every story.
My stock was down. I had left, I quit my job and it was making a lot of I was doing UFO conspiracy, Bigfoot crime shows for Discovery. And part of my job there was evaluating, what we should make. And, I always tended to gravitate towards the funnier stories, like the scammy crime stories. And I was always pitching those and always told hey, that's not really what we do here. Those emotions really don't live together. So when I heard Ed for the first time, I was like, oh, this kid, for lack of a better word, this kid cracked it. Like those two feelings do live together and you can tell that story together. So I guess my feeling was I was vindicated. Everything that you kind of always felt instinctually at least as a creative person and a producer, you're like, oh, it can exist. And he figured out a way to tell it. It felt amazing. And then the second question was, what are the odds? This guy goes back to his hometown one night to perform a charity gig. The kid who bullied him his whole life happens to be back in their two childhood homes that are next door to each other or around the corner from each other. And then he shows up at his doorstep. Like, what are the odds? So then it was suspicion. After that, I was like, I need, you know what I mean? Like, I need to find out if this is real.
This is a very wild tale. Let's fact check this,
Yeah, exactly.
I thought there's probably, to you, it probably felt like the dots connected and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is the kind of thing, right? Then you're like, okay, too good to be true. I mean, so did you approach him afterwards or how did that work when you first came to him, literally?
Yeah. I think the hardest part was, first of all, getting him to respond to me.
Hey, that's universal as well.
Right. It's hard to, first of all, approach people who are subjects who've had traumatic things happen to them. And also someone who, Ed's a comedian and works in entertainment. So I think, the way that we kind of portray it, I think it's at episode 2 where I'm chasing him around. That is 200% accurate. I think we might have actually cut even more times that he ghosted me and didn't show up at a bar or coffee shop to talk. So I think that was a big challenge. But then the second piece was telling him that he just told a true crime story. He just thought he told a funny set that was deeply personal,
right?
That
Which
he
is
was working
true,
through.
But that's also like a true crime documentary you just outlined right there.
Exactly. And then once that information was given, and I think we established a little bit of trust, that was when I was like, okay, now I got to get to work fact checking. And I will say the first thing that really struck me was that he, in the set, he doesn't really talk too much about the crime. It's really about his perspective inside the four walls of his house next to the crimes.
This is Ryder Strong with a podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. You can now binge all episodes of The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 30 years together, 4 kids, and some of reality TV's most unforgettable moments. We know a thing or two about living life out loud. We're taking you behind the scenes in our new podcast, Between Us, with me, Heather Dubrow.
And me, Terry Dubrow. Between Us isn't about perfect lighting or curated Instagram grids.
It's the unfiltered, behind closed doors conversations you wish you could eavesdrop on. Equal parts smart, funny, and a little bit scandalous.
Every week, Heather will bring you an unapologetic take on the headlines, the trends, and the cultural moments everyone's texting about.
And Terry will deliver insider beauty, health, and wellness insights you won't find on TikTok.
Together, we'll tell the stories, spill the secrets, and share the hacks that keep life, marriage, and everything in between feeling fresh and fun.
We may live in a gated community, but there's zero gatekeeping here.
And plenty of did they just say that moments?
Listen to Between Us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Anna Navarro, and on my new podcast, Bleep with Anna Navarro, I'm talking to the people closest to the biggest issues happening in your community and around the world. Because I know deep down inside right now, we are all cursing and asking what the bleep is going on. I'm talking to people like Julie K. Brown, who broke the explosive story on Jeffrey Epstein in 2018. These victims have been let down time and time again. For decades and decades and decades, by local law enforcement, by federal law enforcement, by administration after administration.
The Justice Department, through, I think we counted 4 presidential administrations, failed these victims.
Listen to Bleep with Anna Navarro as part of the My Cultura podcast network. Available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So Wisecrack is essentially a true crime story weaved within the framework literally of a stand-up comedy set. And those two things just by nature don't necessarily always go together, which is why this is a unique project. So for you as a producer and as you dug deeper into the actual crime elements of this story and, you know, the tragedy that happened, how did you sort of create a balance of treating both stories with care and, you know, getting Ed's story across and just his magnetic style and way of talking about this stuff with the sort of journalistic approach that you're probably tiptoeing to make sure you're handling with care? Like, what was that balance and how did you strike that exactly?
I think the only way to do something like this is to have some really good partners. You know that. Like, you've got a great team on Up and Vanished. You know, my team was Charles Forbes. He was in charge of narrative for the storytelling, and I was playing journalist, honestly. Yeah. And we kept each other in check as we went. So I was kind of the record keeper and fact checker. And Charles was the one that was beating out the story structure. And we did this together. Because you're right. Like, you want to do service to the wonderful story that Ed tells and how he tells it. But then in the podcast, like, you know, it's our job to match that. So I think that was if we succeeded at all, it was because we did it together, me and Chuck. And I think that it's really been a threesome between me, Charles, and Ed this entire time. So if we struck the balance, that's, you know, you gotta have good friends.
That's
people.
Very true, right? Yeah, tell me the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. I mean, I feel like the stand-up set is already great, but if you're going to make a podcast about this and you're going to dive deeper into the crime that happened and you're fact-checking and you're interviewing people likely for the first time, it becomes an entirely different beast. And so in a lot of ways, you have to make sure you cross all your T's and dot your I's very well in that lane in order to do service to both parts of this, right? It could fall apart if this falls short over here. So in a lot of ways, I would imagine you almost had to go even harder in that direction in terms of the journalistic part of this whole project.
Entirely. And also me being an American, a nosy American in a small British town didn't go down great either. So I think there was I guess at the end of the day, it took a really long time to make this, but I think it was mostly because it took a long time for trust. to build trust with all the subjects, to build trust with each other editorially, to build trust, like all that stuff. And I will say this too, we failed so many times. I'm embarrassed to tell you how many cuts Stephen and Alex did on the tenderfoot side of things because again, like it is pretty new. There's no real roadmap for something like this. And so, but I think that everyone's willingness to just do it over again and make changes like that was, if anything, was the real reason for success. And then just, again, keeping each other honest and making sure that, because a lot of time passes, it's very easy to forget. I will be very frank with you. I'm working on a bunch of other crime stories, as I know you are. And so I think that was another piece of it, was making sure that all the information and record keeping was super organized. I have a murder binder, and I brought it to Colorado. I bring it everywhere.
I bring it everywhere on the bus, to the coffee shop. Does it just say murder binder on it?
It's pink.
A pink murder binder? Okay. I mean, it kind of goes with the concept of this show, like, give yourself a little breathing room with this heavy content here.
Exactly.
When it came to gaining trust, I guess from the journalism side of things and interviewing people and even gaining the trust of Ed, how did you go about doing that? Was it more of a time is your best friend kind of thing? Or was it, persistence? Like, did you just, hey, I know you might be spooked about me now, but I'm going to try again later, or I'm going to show you something? For me, I always have found that if I want somebody to be vulnerable on the mic about a very intense or sensitive story, then I have to be sort of willing to offer the same. And that just seems like a universally fair exchange. For you, what was that process like in terms of gaining that trust, and what did that mean for you in this project?
I mean, I think that's a perfect thing. It's if you're asking someone to be honest with you, you need to be honest with them first. So I think starting in that place is always the best way. And it kind of felt like this was like the longest time I've ever dated all these people. It was like dating.
Right.
Like I just wore them down over time. Every time they forgot about me, I popped back up.
Oh yeah.
And said like, oh, I've done some more. Can I show you this? Can I get your reaction? And being a consistent person in their life across, at least for Ed, across like 8.5 years. But at the same time, I've also been in his family's life that long too.
Yeah.
I've been texting his mom since then.
Right.
And so I think that, yeah, you're courting these people to some degree, but in a incredibly as transparent as you can be. That I think was the goal, and it seemed to have worked quite well.
What do you feel like has been the most rewarding part of this? Now that you've completed this and it's well received and it's a beautiful, amazing, very gripping podcast all around the board, what do you feel like has been the most rewarding part of this?
Thank you. That's really that means a lot coming from you specifically.
Well, I mean it sincerely. It's awesome.
It's definitely different. You know what? I honestly haven't had a chance to let it sink in. So now you're asking me, how do I feel about it? And like,
well, more like, okay, like, or maybe it's a rewarding moment throughout the process. Maybe it's not an entire reflection of, I'm sure part of you still feels like you're working on this. So,
no, absolutely. I mean, you know how it is. You never stop. Like, there's always new leads. There's always new people popping up. The more that they hear your work, yeah, I guess it's the fact that it's a grind. It never ends. But I think the most rewarding moment for me, again, you can't take away the accolade that you mentioned earlier. #1 true crime podcast in comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that really says it all. Like we crossed over genres, and hopefully we're, intriguing and entertaining 2 sets of audiences now. And that was really rewarding to hear.
To me, it was cool because not in every true crime podcast, especially, do you get the opportunity to sort of gauge an audience's reaction live. And so when he was able to do the set at CrimeCon to 1,000+ people, that was really cool to see people obviously laugh at the funny parts, but also be super immersed in every facet of this story and really kind of feel for all the people involved and kind of have this real-time emotional connection, which you don't always see as a podcaster. And what was it like kind of, I was obviously pacing around super giddy back there, but I'm sure you were like, okay, all this has built to this moment, and you're seeing people really engage with it.
It's crazy to get the live feedback like Ed gets as a stand-up, because like you and I are, I think we think about things a long time, we pursue things a long time, and then people join in the comments and tell us how we messed up. I think that to be able to hear the or the oh my God, and then most of all the questions, like, God, this when Ed performs, it elicits a response from an audience I've personally never seen. I've been to lots of stage shows before and lots of comedy, and people in Atlanta, you'll remember someone ran up on stage in the middle of the set and hugged him.
Yes.
When he was literally mid-sentence.
Right.
It elicits like, and other people, it also digs up so much trauma too from like all the other questions and answers that come up. So it's very rewarding to hear, but also like it's so interesting because man, are we all going through it? That's really what I've learned from that feedback, is that people, they can relate to this. There's so many ways to relate to this story, and everyone wants to tell Ed now or me how they connect to it, whether it be through an illness, whether it be through, domestic violence, whether it be, and it's crazy. Honestly, it's really crazy to see that as feedback so quickly.
Yeah, which I think is probably the coolest silver lining of the genre crossover here, which makes it the most special, is that it can resonate kind of on a different level with any sort of struggle that you've experienced, and kind of find this common ground. Just kind of seeing somebody else process this and go through that. There's so many different layers to it that, that's struggle, hardship, that's relatable across the board, right? And so to kind of feel like seen in a way as an audience is, what I find so unique about it. And like that is one of the coolest parts about making a podcast like this, is that you're able to connect with people in a different way. It's not just, obviously it's a cool show, it's fun, it's crazy, it's dark, but it's also something that's uniquely human, and that resonates. And I love that about it. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more. And, I think Ed took a real risk. I mean, he put it all on the line. He was the most human. He involved his family, his mom, his dad. He laid it all bare about their past transgressions and failings for each other, his brothers, and his neighbors and his tiny town. I really... It is the most human of all human stories, and bullying being, I think, a big theme too.
Yeah, totally.
God, I was bullied. I think we've all been bullied to some degree. Hey, we're from the same. What's up with people from Marietta being bullied and then doing true crime?
I remember all the bullies at the bus stop. Oh
yeah, totally.
They love to pick on me too.
Yeah, it's very relatable for sure.
Is.
Very human, to use your words. I think that's a great way to say
Marietta, Georgia.
Very Marietta, yeah.
No shade there. So this is Wisecrack is a 6-episode podcast, and just going to put this out there now. I assume that if you're listening to this right now, you've listened to the show, but if you haven't made it very deep into the podcast yet, I would stop now and finish it so I don't spoil anything for you. So I want to kind of jump towards the end of the series and pick your brain about a couple things. So we end the series with this cliffhanger, I'll call it that. The idea that, what if Ed is lying, right? Without too many spoilers, or, however you want to say it, let's talk about that. Because you mentioned that early on, wanting to validate some of this stuff. And that would always be a fear, right? And obviously an audience is going to react like they're going to say everyone's lying all the time about everything. Doesn't really matter. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I honestly think that the one thing that we were successful with is staying true to the journey. Jodi, I'm talking about her in the third person, her emotional journey as an investigator. Me. But that was all accurate. I was very skeptical the whole time.
Yeah.
And you'll hear eventually that I do have a pretty deep and confrontation with Ed about some of my skepticism, and how I guess we almost lost that chance to have a transformation and for him to see this a little bit differently. Again, no spoilers, but there's a moment that we scrap Like, and you'll hear it. And that was all authentic. And that was years of buildup of me checking all the boxes in one column and then saying, but there's this question here. So-and-so said this. And so I certainly think that, again, all of that was very accurate to the journey of trying to uncover and trust. It was like, again, it was like dating. I can't come up with a better analogy. It was just about, there's a certain level of trust that is required in the end to like really see through this journey. And I hope that's something that people enjoy too, because, at the end of the day, it's not a whodunit. We know whodunit, after episode 2. There's no who, and then we learn about the what. It's really a why journey.
Yeah.
And if you're into like, I guess the psychology and push and pull of investigator against subject, who happens to also be a very entertaining professional comedian, like this is definitely something that I think will be very interesting in the final episodes.
This is Ryder Strong with a podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. You can now binge all episodes of The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Anna Navarro, and on my new podcast, Bleep with Anna Navarro, I'm talking to the people closest to the biggest issues happening in your community and around the world. Because I know deep down inside right now, we are all cursing and asking, what the bleep is going on? I'm talking to people like Julie K. Brown, who broke the explosive story on Jeffrey Epstein in 2018. These victims have been let down time and time again for decades and decades and decades by local law enforcement, by federal law enforcement, by administration after administration.
The Justice Department, through, I think we counted 4 presidential administrations, failed these victims.
Listen to Bleep with Anna Navarro as part of the My Cultura podcast network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 30 years together, 4 kids, and some of reality TV's most unforgettable moments, we know a thing or two about living life out loud. We're taking you behind the scenes in our new podcast, Between Us, with me, Heather Dubrow.
And me, Terry Dubrow. Between Us isn't about perfect lighting or curated Instagram grids.
It's the unfiltered, behind-closed-doors conversations you wish you could eavesdrop on. Equal parts smart, funny, and a little bit scandalous.
Every week, Heather will bring you an unapologetic take on the headlines, the trends, and the cultural moments everyone's texting about.
And Terry will deliver insider beauty, health, and wellness insights you won't find on TikTok.
Together, we'll tell the stories, spill the secrets, and share the hacks that keep life, marriage, and everything in between feeling fresh and fun.
We may live in a gated community, but there's zero gatekeeping here.
And plenty of, did they just say that moments?
Listen to Between Us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I mean, I could imagine that after several years of playing investigative journalist, being an investigative journalist and being on the ground and doing all the real work and research and making the connections, interviewing people, you have put a lot of time, energy, emotion, thought into this. And if there's a moment that it culminates into this feeling that you've been tricked or conned, that would probably feel pretty bad. And at the same time, if you're challenging Ed and he's like, I'm telling the truth, that probably equally feels not good. So what was that sort of like culminating moment?
God.
Or one of them, I guess.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm thinking very specifically of a confrontation that you'll hear, and I think it's presently I think it's in episode 5 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think there was a lot of mistrust that had built up that needed to be addressed. But ultimately, I think we just assume so much bad stuff about each other. Him
Right.
of me of him, us of strangers on the internet, etc. Like, and in the end, it thankfully it was a journey that was worth taking for me, and also for him. But there was at one point I was like, oh my God, I've spent all this time. What if this guy's a massive
Please
liar?
no. Yeah.
Please no. And then I was like, I guess that's still a story, but maybe not worth telling. And so yeah, there's that part where you're, as a host and investigator, your butt just drops out, and you're like, oh my God, what have I done?
Right.
And you will hear that. There's a big piece of that.
And that's very real. I mean, it is hard to trust people, that you don't know or even know sometimes. And, part of that trust on your end even is kind of taking a little bit of a leap of faith, because, you're not going to definitively know right away, maybe for a long time, until you get to a certain point. And that is a risk that we all have to take in getting closer to anybody or anything, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like we don't want to sit here and never learn anything new, but we also don't want to walk around being, clueless and taken advantage of in a place where that happens in the world,
Totally. It's a fine line from being thinking critically and, you just don't want to feel naive. You don't want to feel like a fool. And sometimes I think that we take that critical thinking skill, especially someone who thinks I think in like a doomsday scenario for myself.
Right.
Like it could spiral. It really
Mm-hmm.
can. And it's also like, checking yourself in the work and saying, okay, here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Here's what I need to ask. Here's where I need to go. I need to now not talk to this person and exclusively understand this perspective. So hopefully we did that decently well.
I think you did. So do you believe Ed now?
I'd lose no sleep over it. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
No, seriously. You look back at it and you hear some of the conversations we have, and I'm like, oh, that was really harsh, Tovay. Like that wasn't nice.
Yeah.
But no, there's no question in my mind. And it's really, now that I look back on it, I think there's some cultural differences too. I was talking to some of my British friends and talking about the story, and they were like, oh yeah, people from Essex, they don't talk about their feelings, and they certainly don't talk about anything that's happening in the town or their lives. It's very, the currency is saying nothing there and just living your life privately. So to force an entire town of people to do the thing that is so deeply unnatural and things that they just haven't done for centuries, I get it. That was a big piece of that too. So I do look back on that and think, there's that stiff upper lip that I was fighting against as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean people are liars.
There are a lot of victims in this story, the murders for one. And I feel like as a whole, just the impact as you dissect it, it is very expansive. Just sort of all the different intricate ways this impacted all different kinds of people in this town, family, even down to listeners across the ocean, and feeling it in a brand new way. What have you found in terms of just the impact this entire event and what's transpired afterwards has had on the community, Ed, maybe even yourself?
Yeah. I think I'm still waiting to hear back from the community, but I certainly can speak for myself and say this whole experience and learning about this particular case, we don't talk about official medical diagnosis because the killer that we talk about in the story never officially had one.
Right.
But mental health is the one thing that I've learned and I've taken with me, I think.
What have you learned?
It's so complicated, especially in a socialized medical system like the UK. All these agencies are working together, but also have their own goals, right? They need to close cases. They have boxes to check. And sometimes and sometimes that can do a big disservice to people too. Sometimes it's tremendously helpful.
Yeah.
But I don't know if in this case that was the situation, to be really frank with you. And it wasn't that anyone was not doing their job, but you got to figure out a way for all the agencies to talk to each other, if that makes any sense. And you know, I really look at Brett's father, Pete, who we will meet in future episodes, as the real winner here. You expect one thing to come out of that conversation, and it's completely the opposite. And I think that one of the things that he was very successful with was learning how to manage his feelings and processing things.
Oh.
Because he experienced it the worst.
Yeah.
So I think that he really comes out so, I find him very inspirational in general. That's the one thing I take with me.
So what do you take from that? Like you're seeing somebody kind of overcome something and handle something extremely difficult, and you're like, wow, that's admirable, I would assume, right? Like,
very much. He did the work. Like that's the answer. He spent a lot of time having uncomfortable conversations with professionals until he was able to come out on the other side, and that took years. But that was something. And again, I don't think that's something that naturally, a 60-year-old person in general was taught to do or be willing to do. And I think that's really impressive on his part.
You mentioned earlier how special it was, people coming up to you all after the show, and I'm sure you get emails and stuff like that. Just different listeners connecting in various ways to this story. I guess, who do you hope this podcast reaches? What do you hope people gain through this as a listener, ideally?
That's such a good question. I do think that this is not a true crime 101 story, if that makes any sense, because it's much more of towards the end, we really get into, I think we're about to dovetail into these episodes where it becomes such a character study of personality and how one reacts to things, if that makes any sense, traumatic things. So I definitely think that if you're somebody who is maybe not even interested in true crime or comedy, if you're interested in, I think, just generally how humans respond to crazy things, we're about to take you there for sure. So I think that's what makes it certainly universally rewarding as an endpoint for sure in the story. And I don't know, I hope that we do justice to the victims. Obviously, that's the number one thing to me. I think that this story got really swept under the rug in the UK for whatever reason. Who knows why things happen the way they do, and in the news media. But I really think that it's important to honor them specifically. It really turned into the Brett show at some point because he was such a mysterious type of murderer.
Sure, yeah.
And the crime itself was very confusing. But Gillian Phillips, David Oakes. And then ultimately, other people too that are involved in this. But like, I really, that's the one thing, honestly, their memory, acknowledging it happened, I think is the most important thing. And then I think, also you're going to feel a lot of feelings and I hope they make you think.
Yeah, right. I love that. Well, Jodi, this has been amazing. You and the rest of the team, Charles, Ed himself, the rest of the Tenderfoot team, super proud of all you guys. It's truly a one of a kind. I think you put together a blueprint for a new kind of true crime show that has really resonated with listeners and myself, and is extremely special, and I think a positive impact on a lot of people. So great job.
Thank you so much. And I mean, like, again, I don't think that the part of this journey was just like pitching the story around and seeing who would want to tell it. And the fact that you and Donald said yes, let's try.
Yeah, we'll hop on that crazy train. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, like, thank you for being on the crazy train. I think that's a big part. That's a big part of taking the risk, is finding somebody who knows the genre, but is also willing to take risks and push stories. So again, we would not be here if it weren't for you guys. And I know that Ed, Charles, and myself are so appreciative. So thank you guys so much. And I hope everyone enjoys it.
Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. If you haven't listened to the podcast yet, I don't know why you're here. So definitely go listen to it now or re-listen to it. But Jodi, this has been amazing. Charles, excellent job. Ed, you're the man. Wisecrack is an amazing body of work, and I might just go binge it again myself, because every time I find a new Easter egg in there. So
please do give me another download.
I will.
This is the biggest night in podcasting.
The countdown is on to our 2026 iHeart Podcast Awards. Live from South by Southwest, March 16th, we'll honor the very best in podcasting from the past year and celebrate the most innovative talent and creators in the industry.
It's truly a who's who of the podcasting world.
Creativity, knowledge, and passion will all be on full display.
And the winner of the iHeart Podcast Award is...
See all the nominees now at iHeart.com/podcast awards.
Audible is a proud sponsor of the Audible Audio Pioneer Award. Explore the best selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and originals all in one easy app. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
Hey everyone, it's Emily Simpson and Shane Simpson from the Legally Brunette podcast.
Each week, we're bringing you true crime through a legal lens.
Whether you want all the facts on the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, or you still need to wrap your head around the Diddy verdict, we're breaking it all down step by step.
And we're not just lawyers, we're also husband and wife. It makes for some pretty entertaining episodes.
Listen to Legally Brunette on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Is the government hiding proof of intelligent life beyond our planet? A new season of High Strange is here. The explanation keeps changing, but the stories don't go away.
Videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real.
My name is Payne Lindsey, and my new season of High Strange goes deeper into real encounters, first-hand accounts, and the explanations that never seem to stick.
Images of that rotating thing captured by U.S. Navy aircraft.
I talked to scientists, military witnesses, pilots, and people who saw something they can't unsee.
There is no other explanation for what we saw that day.
I remembered those faces and they weren't human.
High Strange is available now. Listen for free on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. To binge the entire season of High Strange now, ad-free, subscribe to Tenderfoot Plus at tenderfootplus.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.